Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Delighted to be joined by Marianne Williamson. Was a presidential candidate 2020 as well as 2024, despite both times the media pretty much trying to erase her as a candidate. And I want to start there. We'll get to the Biden, hubbubaloo. But I found it very interesting and ironic. You started to see some pundits, CNN entities, MSNBC, even New York Times wonder, well, maybe we should have had a more vibrant Democratic primary when these were the same figures in print and online saying that Biden had no credible challengers. I'll play the president's defiant call in to his pals at Morning Joe this morning. He too said we had a open process. Let's take a listen.
The bottom line here is that we're not going anywhere. I am not going anywhere. I wouldn't be running if I didn't absolutely believe that I am the best candidate to beat Donald Trump in 2024. We had a Democratic nominating process where the voters spoke clearly. I won 14 million of those votes, et cetera. So I not only believe that from the beginning, but I wanted to.
So did the voters speak clearly, or were they force-fed one option?
They absolutely were force-fed a manipulated, engineered process. I call it the political media industrial complex. When you were talking about my race in 2020, I had fair enough exposure on CNN and MSNBC. I had a CNN town hall. This time, someone very clearly, very early on, said, get rid of her. And the playbook was, as Tulsi Gabbard and others have described it, make sure that people don't even know she's out there to the best of your ability. And let's be clear, if you're a Democratic candidate for president and you are never on CNN, you are never on MSNBC, if you are completely blacklisted there, then people don't even know that you exist. Plus the other things they do, the psyops, the character assassination, the suppression of ballots, letting people know at Democratic clubs, don't let her speak there, spreading the ruse that we don't primary an incumbent when we primary incumbent mayors and senators and congresspeople all the time. A vote for her is a vote for Trump. She's a spoiler when, hello, this is a primary. So I speak from the belly of the beast with visceral understanding that this was not a truly uncorrupted Democratic primary. At this point, however, I'm not interested in the past, I'm interested in the present. It's interesting how strong the president sounded on that Joe Scarborough, but we all saw what we've seen. So if he can't be the person that he was on Joe Scarborough 24/7, then the American people and certainly the Democratic voters or people thinking of voting Democrat have every reason to be concerned.
And, I know you want to look forward, but I got to ask, I'm not a doctor, you're not a doctor, but if they would have had a debate, even one, with you,
that's exactly right.
At the time, RFK Jr. Was running in the primary. I can't imagine he was much better 6 months ago. And perhaps if something like what we saw a week ago happened 6 months ago, you wouldn't have the meltdown and freak out now, because there would have been a lot more time for a reinvigorated primary process. Maybe more people get in, maybe the media forced to treat your candidacy seriously. What do you say to that's the point of debates?
I think you're making an excellent point. This is really giving insight into why they were so insistent that the role of the DNC this time would be to make sure that the president was renominated and to absolutely do everything possible to suppress any other candidacies. You're absolutely right. What the press and the rest of us did pick up on was, wow, he doesn't do many press conferences, does he? Wow, he doesn't do many interviews, does he? But when you take those two facts and then you partner them with the fact that he wasn't willing to take on any primary challengers, then the whole thing begins to make more sense.
And, I find it curious. I mean, I remember when I was on the road in 2020 as a journalist, you were on the road running. I mean, I heard mainstream reporters at bars openly giggling about, does he have dementia or Alzheimer's? I don't say that to demean him, but this is what I heard from journalists who would never report that, or even report that there was concern among politicians, donors 4 years ago. But now all of these reporters and Democratic Party elites are shocked or acting shocked when they saw, again, I don't know what he has or if he has anything, but when they saw clearly him not cognitively there during the debate. This is your second time running. You've been around. Does it seem genuine that all of these elites in the Democratic Party and media just didn't see this, or that there was kind of a coordinated campaign to look away?
Of course, it's not genuine. These people are not stupid, but they are more interested in protecting their own careers, really, is what this is about. They are all so afraid to do anything that the DNC has not sanctioned. This is why they didn't primary him to begin with. This is why so many of them are staying with him now. And then some of them are staying with him, but be very clear, in the background, they're putting their teams together. Gavin Newsom, for instance. So this is all a chess game they're playing, and they are risking our democracy. You know, this is not just a crisis of the president's debate performance or the interview with Stephanopoulos. This is a failure of crisis management on such a level that makes the Democratic Party look completely incapable of handling an emergency. You know, the American people have a right to think that their government would know how to handle an emergency. These people are cowering before Joe Biden. If you're not tough enough to go in there and say what's really true and lay down the truth to Joe Biden, how are we to expect that you could do that with Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un or Benjamin Netanyahu? What is all this? They're like wringing their hands. Today I saw that Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff on the Sunday shows raised questions about his age. The weakness here is phenomenal. And this is what happens when you're more loyal to the club than you are to your democracy. And this is exactly what George Washington warned us about.
And do you think the media, for similar reasons, not wanting to lose access, invitation to the DNC Christmas party, do you think the media basically covered this up for years? It's
all part of the same thing. Of course, when it's interesting. If I had $1 billion, I would sue CNN and MSNBC. Of course, I would lose, is that they've already won in court after Bernie's. But I would love to have a CNN or MSNBC executive on the stand have to answer. Did you or did you not have actual conversations with the head of the DNC suggesting that Marianne Williamson, an FEC registered candidate, be blacklisted on your platform? Just for the American people to see what's going on here. But let's be clear, Jordan, we have to think in bigger terms also. We ourselves have to think, how are we going to, if they are not going to stand up courageously and powerfully in order to defeat Donald Trump in Project 2025, the question has to be, how are we going to? And that's, I think, the question that we have to respond in order to demonstrate that we're grown-ups here, even if other people aren't.
And that's my next question, but just to confirm, do you think the media knew or had suspicions about Biden's condition and just didn't covered it up?
The media is not a monolith. So to me, the fact that you're erasing and invisibilizing any other candidates is just as egregious as invisibilizing or erasing his condition. None of it speaks to journalistic integrity.
Right. What's interesting, and again, if the focus wasn't on Biden, I mean, Donald Trump did lie some 30 to 40 times during that debate, and now he's lying that he knows nothing about Project 2025.
Kind of like nothing about it. I don't know those people.
Kind of like he said back in the day, I've never heard of David Duke, which obviously he did. But from your view, what is the most dangerous element here? Because if the election were held today and it is Biden versus Trump, I don't think you need to be a political pollster to know it's likely Donald Trump would win re-election. And on the heels of a Supreme Court ruling, essentially that he could do whatever he wants. To you, what is at stake in terms of democracy, criminalize or weaponizing the criminal justice system? Or what do you find to be the biggest threat of a Trump presidency?
Well, first of all, let's begin where we are. If Joe Biden remains the candidate, not only will Joe Biden go down in all probability, but we will probably lose the House and the Senate as well. He's dragging down other candidates. If the Republicans get a trifecta, in 2024, then it's not even, we are past, this is what's happening with all of these things is much like what's happening with the environment. We are past the warning stage. Everything we've been warned about is now happening. Look at the immunity case the other day. The Supreme Court, this is not just warning what they might do. They have overturned Roe v. Wade. They have given immunity from criminal prosecution to the chief executive. We're already there. So all of us have to get into mode right now of doing everything possible. And I hope for those, Jordan, we have a progressive candidate here who has won 500,000 votes, despite the nullification, despite the erasure. I won 500,000 votes. Every state where I was on the ballot with Dean Phillips, I defeated Dean Phillips. The hunger for a progressive message in this country, you and I both know this. You and I know this. You wouldn't be as popular as you are. The people want Medicare for all. And that's a majority of Republicans as well as Democrats. A majority of Republicans as well as Democrats want tuition-free college and tech school. They want to feel we're fighting for a guaranteed living wage. They want to feel that somebody is repudiating the forever war machine, dismantling the drug war, truly answering to the climate crisis as the emergency that it is. What we have to, those of us who do have progressive voices, have to ask ourselves is, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to just sit around and talk about it? Or are we going to face the fire? And I say face the fire. And of course, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, as we know, the president does have the right to hold on to those delegates if he wants to. However, it's like when your friend is simply taking too many drugs, when your friend is drinking too much and you stage an intervention. I do not believe that they could not put together a group, Schumer, whoever else, of very powerful Democrats to walk into the room with President Biden, Mrs. Biden, Hunter Biden, whomever else needs to be told, this is over. You are risking our democracy. I don't buy that, well, there's just nothing we can do. I don't buy that. And then what we can do as a progressive movement is to be ready at that moment to take it from there and to support a candidate who is going to be competing against every other corporate neoliberal Democrat, some of whom are, I'm not making a blank criticism of all of that, but they're not the progressive voice that I believe not only do millions of Americans desperately need, but which I believe a critical mass of Americans want.
And let me challenge you on the democracy point, because I feel like, to me, maybe I'm just jaded because I've been around the country and seen what this democracy looks like. I don't think we have a functioning democracy as it is.
We don't.
When you look at, just the Electoral College, then Princeton did a study a decade ago saying we're an oligarchy. Then you have, in your case, Florida canceled the Democratic primary. North Carolina all but canceled the Democratic primary. The media blackouts. We saw what happened in 2016, 2020.
So let me amend that to what is left.
Okay.
Because I agree with you. Obviously, we are functioning oligarchy. And if anything is a demonstration of it, it's what's happening right now. This is about an oligarchy having engineered all of this and now having it all blow up in their face. But we at least have some potentials if we go in there. Whereas what the far right Republicans, such as those on the Supreme Court, are trying to do is to lock up any possibility of our fighting back.
And let's say you sneak through, because your plan is to now go for the nomination at the convention. Let's say now, with all the concern and obviously voters want a different choice, that you sneak through and get some coverage. If people are seeing you for the first time, if you're elected day one, what are we looking at in tampering down inflation, dealing with the climate inferno? Obviously, there's lesser covered things. Homelessness is up significantly last year. Income inequality is still soaring. What would be your kind of, I don't want to say first 100 days, but your immediate first priorities?
We absolutely must begin to ramp down fossil fuel extraction. This president, although, they tout that he's been the climate president because there have been some healthy investments in green energy and the Inflation Reduction Act. The truth is he's given more permits for oil to oil companies for fossil fuel extraction even than Trump did. And we know what has happened on the slopes of Alaska and so forth. So beginning there, recognizing what do we have to do, and if the only way to make this happen is to declare a climate emergency, I will declare a climate emergency. The next thing we have to do is to end all government contracts with these union-busting chieftains. This is another thing that the Supreme Court has been very active on. They are trying to put the nail in the coffin of real union activism in this country. Now, to a certain extent, Biden has tried to bolster the NLRB and so forth. One of the things that the president has is the bully pulpit. We must make a moral case to the American people that we will not be able to right the ship of a very, very immoral, unjust economy without deep support of unions. We have now an economy in which the real dichotomy, and this is not just a dichotomy in our economy, it's a dichotomy in our society. It's not between left and right. It's between powerful and powerless. We now have have an economy and a government, for that matter, that is skewed in support of those who already have capital and easy access to more, versus those who are stuck in these invisible chains of economic insecurity. So one of the first things I would talk about is not only that we allow the 2017 tax cut to expire, we should even talk about, as soon as I get there, if I have the Democrats in both House and Senate repealing that thing already. We should start immediately having a conversation about a wealth tax. We should immediately have a conversation about Medicare for all. I think we can use the Higher Education Act to make a very strong case for the complete elimination of those college loan debts, and we need to start on the path to the tuition-free college and tech schools for everyone. So we have to come in strong, and we have to have a president who advocates for these things. Listen, the American people are not naive. We know that the president cannot go in there with a magic wand and whatever she wants. Although, given how Trump will act, that's exactly what he will try to do. But to at least make the moral case, for the American people, and that will include absolute recognition that you cannot allow the tax structure to remain what it is and be able to accomplish any of these things. We are a government of the donors, by the lobbyists, and for the corporations. And we need to return to a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And when you think about that first 100 days, even having a president saying that day after day, we need a president who in her first State of the Union address talks about the fact that we have the highest child poverty rate of any other advanced democracy, who talks about the fact that we have the highest rate of chronic illness, who talks about the fact that big food companies, pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, big oil companies, chemical companies, gun manufacturers, and defense contractors are perpetrating a system of economic tyranny upon the American people. And this president will not stand for it. The Democratic Party must return to its unequivocal advocacy for the working people of the United States. Let me get in there with that message, and we can win this. Look what just happened in France. Everything that I just said, and you know this, everything I just said is considered moderate in any other advanced democracy. And we have to shout it loud, and we have to shout it from the rooftops. And on the chance that he does, whether he willingly does it or is to some extent, however we get there, if this thing opens up and we have a candidate truly speaking for the things that I just said, we will win this thing, because this is what the American people would want.
Two questions on Israel, Gaza. One, if you got elected, would you cut off funding to Israel for their ongoing campaign against, I believe it's a genocide. It seems Benjamin Netanyahu has no intentions of stopping. And number two, do you believe Biden is cognitively equipped to handle this war, as well as Ukraine, Russia, and other geopolitical hot zones?
One of the things he said in the debate that was like, what? He said, I'm the one who designed the Mideast peace plan. What Mideast peace plan? I think his unconditional support for Benjamin Netanyahu has been horrifying. To me, there's one solution here, and that is a two-state solution. And that two-state solution I believe that there are Arab powers. We need an international consortium, mainly led by Arab powers. We should be an active and passionate participant, but the United States cannot run that, designing how we get there. And I believe that supporting this war in Gaza has been obviously horrifying, obviously terrible for the Palestinian people, but I think it's been terrible for the Israeli people as well, as thousands and thousands and thousands of people in an ever-growing peace movement in Israel are trying to make clear to Netanyahu.
Would you cut off funding as president?
For all offensive action, yes. This is not where we should be. You know, our guiding principle is that all men are created equal, and that should be all human beings, not just Americans. And our highest alliance should be to humanity itself. And this is absolutely unacceptable. But then on the other hand, this is, if I may, this is one more reason why we have to beat Donald Trump, however. Donald Trump, remember what he said at the debate the other night was, let Israel go in there and do what it needs to do. If you really care about Gaza, you really need to make sure that these Israeli apologists who are running, and I want to take that back, Netanyahu apologists are not given the reins and the keys to the White House in 2024.
Should also be noted, Jared Kushner, who made billions of dollars off of Saudi Arabia, joked about plush beachfront property in Gaza at the end.
He's not joking. Yeah, he's not joking.
Yeah. I want to get back to something else President Biden said. Frankly, he called into Morning Joe, so not the toughest task, but he said something that struck me. Let me play it.
Because I've got a pretty good political instinct and eye. And here's the deal. It's not going to happen here this time around. The American public is not going to move away from me as an average voter. And again, I'm here for two reasons, pal. One, to rebuild the economy for hardworking middle-class people, give everybody a shot. Just a straight shot. Everybody gets a fair chance, number one. Number two, remember all this talk about how I don't have the black support? Come on, give me a break. Come with me. Watch. I'm getting so frustrated by the elites.
With the disclaimer, we're two white folks. I find Biden and most Democrats to be fairly arrogant and out of touch when it comes to the black community. Not that black voters all care about the same things. I think they care about the same things Latino voters, white voters care about, their wallet, social justice, dignity, a chance. But Biden talks like he did in 2020, like if you ain't black, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. You go around the country. What major thing has Biden done for the black community that they, or any community, should be so loyal to him?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for the black community, but I think clearly every community, black, Latino, Asian, any other, is concerned primarily about the economic issues that are damning the majority of Americans. One of the things the president won on in 2020 was the idea of the minimum wage. So let's not forget that our minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. He got in there. He gave a $15 minimum wage provision for all federal workers. He tried to put it into, I think, the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm not sure.
The COVID Act. Yeah.
The COVID Act, correct. The COVID Act. And the parliamentarian said he couldn't. Now, I'd like to point out that there's no Republican president who would allow himself to be stopped by the parliamentarian. How convenient was that? At that point, the president dropped it, and you never heard another word about it. Another thing he could do if he was really so, and I want to point out on the minimum wage, we have 1/3 of America's workers are working for less than $15 an hour, and a half of them cannot find a place to live. And in every major city in the United States, a living wage is over $20 an hour. Another thing the president could do if he really cared about bolstering the economic condition of the American person would be to call the archivist and demand that she publish the ERA. That's all it would take is one phone call, and immediately women would be given. Once again, how convenient is that? Because to do that would be to challenge the Chamber of Commerce. This is the deal, and we all know this. The Republican Party has been completely taken over by this corporatist mentality. The Democratic Party tries to have it both ways. So what the neoliberal corporatists such as Biden do, they want to help people, but only to the point where to go any further would not challenge the economic, financial, profit-making bottom line of their donors. So what they do is continue to say, oh, we really care about the working people of the United States. Really? Then why haven't you lifted the minimum wage? Really? Then why haven't you published the ARA? And on and on and on.
And I'd like to ask you what I find so illuminating is you have all of these Democrats with this kind of West Wing TV show version of democracy. Democracy's at stake. But at the same time, I don't know if you've noticed since the debate, I don't know, 70% of the coverage I've seen has been about the donors and what the donors are doing and the donors freaking out. Last night was reported the donors want to do a blitz primary before the convention. How's that for democracy if all the coverage and so much of the attention is based on what the wealthy elites think?
Well, you know the answer to that. Those wealthy elite are the ones who own those media corporations. That's why I call it a political media industrial complex. I used to think that the media, the mainstream corporate media, I used to think that they chopped wood and carried water for these economic overlords, these corporate overlords. But I realize now they are corporate overlords. So they're just propaganda television. They're the same ones who will do on their shows, the economy is doing so well. Well, only 10%, they're talking about the stock market, only 10% of the American people own 90% of those stocks. So they say the economy is doing well. Who are they speaking for? Because 39% of the American people are reporting that they're regularly skipping meals in order to pay their rent. Millions of Americans are selling their blood plasma. 70% of Americans say they're living with chronic economic anxiety. The majority can't afford a $1,000 unexpected expenditure. The majority is living paycheck to paycheck. 70 to 90 million are uninsured or underinsured on health care. So the mainstream media is simply an arm of the oligarchy. And but at this point, the issue in anything in life is not what are they doing to you, but who are you in response and what are you going to do about it? And that's what I think the left has to ask ourselves now. What are you going to do about it?
Two more
and that's
questions.
why I'm running.
Two more
Pardon?
questions. Two more questions. Obviously, the president matters, but I think we're starting to see perhaps the Supreme Court matters more. Biden has refused to expand the court. I think it's political malpractice that the Democrats did not launch impeachment inquiries into Clarence Thomas, potentially Samuel Alito for conflicts, among other things. If you became president, do you try to expand the court? Do you look at some of those Republican conservative judges who are taking lavish vacations and other things from Republican donors? Because whether you're president or not, the Supreme Court, I mean, they just basically gutted all federal agencies to regulate, and they all but criminalize homelessness just in the matter of the last week. What do you do about the Supreme Court?
I'm 100% with you. Of course, it would take an actual act of Congress to actually expand the court. But what the president has, once again, is the bully pulpit. I would say that from the very beginning, almost immediately upon taking office. We absolutely should expand that court. It is a rogue court. It is more loyal to its corporatist masters than it is to the Constitution or to the people of the United States. And, you know, it's interesting when you talk about Clarence Thomas or you talk about Alito and impeachment. Can you imagine if this was on the other foot, if the shoe was on the other foot? The Democrats are looking like a culture of powerlessness, a culture of whining, a culture of no spine. You know, let this mother in there. Take that however you want to.
And lastly, tell people just kind of the game plan. The DNC, the convention is about a month away. You are pledging to vie for the nomination. It looks like this week will be pivotal in terms of the Democratic Party and media, whether they, fold and go along with Biden. But if people want another choice at the convention, what is your realistic path to change delegates' minds and actually have a legitimate chance there?
Well, if the president does not release those delegates, then there is no legitimate path. If the president does release his delegates, then my issue is to compete for those delegate votes. And anybody who wants to support that can go to Marianne2024.com and do what we need to do to create political force. Donate money, volunteer, get on social media. Don't buy into their psyops. And let's get this done. It's not a matter of who, it's a matter of what. And right now we have one candidate speaking this progressive vision. I have been doing this for a year and a half. I've taken a lot of hits, and I'm still here. And all of us together, Jordan, we can make this breakthrough. I pointed it out, they did it in France. We don't have to just give up here. We don't have to just acquiesce here. Peter Hager used to say, I know you know Peter, he said, I'd rather die on my feet. No, what did he say? I'd rather live. What did he say? I'd rather live on, what did he say? I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And he's absolutely right.
And one more to progressives who are down with, are done with the Democratic Party. If Biden gave up his delegates and you could vie for that at the open convention, vie for the nomination, what will be your message to folks who they're voting for Jill Stein, they're voting for Cornel West, they're voting for RFK? Why should they consider, despite their reservations about the Democratic Party, voting for you rather than a third party?
I would never use the word should. I would respectfully submit what I would do. Medicare for all, tuition-free college and tech school, guaranteed living wage, Department of Peace, repudiating the U.S. war machine, dismantling the drug war. Jill and I'm closer to Jill than I am to Bobby on most issues, but all people should do is hear me, hear Jill, hear Bobby. I think it would be a very healthy race. I think it would be so good for America. It would be, I believe that it would be a very respectful race. And then people should do whatever their hearts tell them to do in November. I think the most important thing to do is not tune out. Listen deeply, observe us, and give me a chance to make my case. That's what people should do. Let everybody make their case and then vote your heart. That's the vision of American democracy that the founders stood on. The founders did not believe that we would always make the right choice, but that if we have a free press, if we have freedom of assembly, if we have education and so forth, that more than not, we would make the right decision. I believe that if we have a process going forward, which is not locked up by the cabal that you and I have been talking about, then we will have a very healthy race, a very exciting race, and whoever wins in November will be the right person to take it from here.
Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it. And good luck.
Thank you, Jordan.
As
All
things
my
unfold.
best. Thanks.